तन्हा दिल घबराता है नीता दर्द जगाता है आ जाओ तुम जल्दी से दम घुटता सा जाता है इसलिए मैंने टेलीफोन किया है इसलिए मैंने टेलीफोन किया है हेलो हेलो
अभी तो घर पे बैठी है अभी नहीं मैं आ सकती दिल को जरा संभालो ना अभी तो मिलके आई हूँ किस लिए तुमने टेलीफोन किया है किस लिए तुमने टेलीफोन किया
जिक्र हो अब आसमां का या ज़मीं की बात.
Well, it's my beautiful friend Kapadya Lalman from KP's Kitchen. And who's the handsome guy we have in the studio today? It's no other than Judge George Grasso. That's right, he is recently retired as an administrative judge from the Queen's Supreme Court, the criminal team. I'll give you a little bit of rundown because I have so much questions and I'm sure you guys have some questions too. So he was the supervising judge in the Bronx from, it says, criminal court, supervising judge citywide in arraignments, criminal court judge, Kings County Criminal Court, 30 years in the NYPD, Southeast Queens foot cop. Beat cop. Oh, that's what they said. The beat cop. I was like, what's a beat cop? Foot cop. First deputy of the police commissioner, guys. Wow. I have someone who's been in this community for quite a number of years, so I'll take down the music. And let's say welcome to Mr. George Grasso. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great.
You are always smiling. Every time I seen you at events, he's smiling. And before I say anything else, I do want to let you guys know that we will be hosting a fundraiser. Let me find that flyer for Mr. George Grasso, and I hope you guys could come on down and support, all the time. Every election season, I will encourage our community to get out there and vote. Your vote is your voice. If you don't go out there and put it on paper, you don't have a say. I'll bring this a little closer. So guys, I urge you to get out there and vote. When is election?
Well, the Democratic primary is June 27th, and I'm proud to say this past Monday, I went to the Board of Elections with my election attorney, and we filed over 9,500 signatures. Only 4,000 were required, almost 2.5 times that what was required. So I will be on the Democratic ballot, challenging the incumbent Melinda Katz.
Wow, awesome. I must say that your team was working very hard, and I know at the Holy Parade
is approaching a crisis situation with respect to public safety. Over the last several years, during the tenure of the current district attorney, Melinda Katz, we've seen Queens is divided in police department terms into 2 patrol boroughs. Patrol Borough Queens South and Patrol Borough Queens North. So Queens South, which is where we are right now, 7 major index crimes over the past 2 years, according to NYPD ComStat data, is up, and that's the murders, the robberies, the felony assaults, the grand larcenies, the car thefts, all added in a bundle, is up over 40% over the 2 years. But Queens North, if you think that's bad, Queens North for the same crimes in the same period is up over 68%.
Wow.
Meanwhile, you've got certain precincts in Queens that are just totally spinning out of control. For example, the 109th precinct, which has a population, one of the largest in the city, of almost 300,000 people, over that 2-year period, has experienced a 126% increase in index crimes. And when you drill down into robberies and felony assault, the most disrupting and violent of crimes. They're up about 170% in that time period. Car thefts, grand larceny auto is up about 145%. This does not have to be happening. But we have a district attorney who never speaks publicly about these numbers, refuses to directly acknowledge the numbers. And if you can't acknowledge the problem, you can't deal with the problem. So I'm a person who has a plan to deal with the problem. And another thing I decided to run, and I had to leave the bench to do, is I think underneath a lot of this is our New York State legislature, which is largely controlled by Democrats. It's a supermajority. And I am a Democrat. I'm a 40-year lifelong Queens registered Democrat. They passed this criminal justice reform package in 2029 that basically took half the crimes. They made them non-qualified offenses. Things like assaults and drug dealings and burglaries and harassments and fare evasions. And they said they're non-qualified, meaning that a person could commit them 1, 5, 20, 50 times.
You go in, you get out.
And just get out, get out.
Right.
So the entire sense of accountability has been lost, and that's a glue to the fabric of our society. We should have a district attorney who's leaning in, who understands the problem, confronts the problem, and is ready to deal with the problem. I will be that district attorney. That's why I decided to run.
Thank you. I feel like your 30 years in NYPD contribute towards that, making it your better vision.
It not only contribute to that, it's part of my being. I started as a 22-year-old foot cop in Southeast Queens, in these neighborhoods. I went to law school at night. I did a lot of disciplinary work. I ran the internal disciplinary system for a period of 5 years. But I became a captain in 1993, and I was in the Office of Deputy Commissioner of Legal Matters, the General Counsel Office, when Commissioner Braden became police commissioner. And we at that time had over 2,000 murders a year in New York City.
2,000.
2,000. Much worse than it is now. And Commissioner Braden actually asked me to help his team, join his team, and I actually helped develop the first quality of life strategy, where we began attending to street-level drug dealing, street-level harassments and assault, the larcenies, the thefts, everything, the graffiti, everything that was making people feel unsafe, underground and above ground.
It was improved.
And we had, within a matter of a couple of years, homicides were down over half, under 1,000. The subways, everybody felt comfortable again. The whole city, the population grew from 7 million and decreasing to 8 million and increasing. And now all of these tools are being taken away by a misguided legislature driven by an extreme political ideology. And instead of having a district attorney in Queens County that is going to lean in, use the authority that the district attorney has as the chief law enforcement officer of the county, that district attorney Katz, never even talks about quality of life, never talks about a quality of life strategy, never talks about the high crime numbers, doesn't directly confront the state legislature and challenge them to do a redo where we want to minimize the jail population on Rikers Island. But
don't let them out into community when, keeping us unsafe.
And by the way, guess what's happening? Because when these misguided policies are allowed to go unfestered, not only is the community less safe, crime goes up, which is happening. And when crime goes up, the jail population goes up. And this was all done in theory to close Rikers. But the plan to close Rikers, I'm going to say publicly on your broadcast, that is DOA. It is dead on arrival. It's a bogus plan based on an untruth. The untruth was the city council back about 4 years ago under Mayor de Blasio and Corey Johnson as the speaker. They passed a plan that was based on a head count of 3,300. I say, what hat did they pick that out of? We had seen Rikers populations in New York over 20,000 in my career. Through the type of proactive policies that we had in the criminal justice system, we were bringing the population down. We brought it down dramatically. But what's happening now is the population is starting to go up again. As of today, that number is over is approaching 6,000. Wow. That number. So if every jail that was passed in the budget, local jails to replace Rikers, was available today, and by the way, most of them are actually behind schedule, but if they were available today, you'd still need Rikers for about 3,000 people. So this is not happening. And by law, Rikers is supposed to close by 2027. The district attorney should be putting this information out there and challenging the city council and supporting Mayor Adams, who, by the way, is trying to bring attention to these issues.
I heard of that.
All of these things I'm doing, and I will continue to do.
Thank you. I heard of that closing for a while now. So, that was all the works in LaGuardia, building up all that area. But, as I said, it was a rumor. I heard something, and then it was swept under the carpet. So thank you for bringing that up. Let's take a music video, and we'll be right back with Judge George Grasso.
Time bomb. It's a time bomb, and you're not dealing with it. Everybody wants to be,
Well, guys, we have a fundraiser for Judge George Grasso. It will be on Monday, April 17 at Kiss Entertainment Hall, 130-35 91st Avenue.
7 to 10.
7 to 10 p.m. You can't stop him when he's on. Pause. But I heard of that, and then I heard they want to make a local jail in our community. So that was like the talk.
Well, the thing is that it's the worst of all worlds. Mm-hmm. Because they've got this plan, they're defunding Rikers.
Hey, Mr. Ravi D. Mohan, good evening to you. Maureen Ramcharan. Judge George Grasso was recently retired as an administrative judge from the Queen's Supreme Court criminal team. He was a supervising judge in the Bronx criminal court system. With his years of experience, he said it's time to run for the DA's office because he doesn't like what's happening in our community. He wants to make a difference, and we'll talk about his plan as a DA coming up.
जब कोई बात बिगड़ जाए, जब कोई मुश्किल पड़ जाए, तुम देना साथ मेरा ओ हमनवा। जब कोई बात बिगड़ जाए, जब कोई मुश्किल पड़ जाए, तुम देना साथ मेरा ओ हमनवा।
Yeah, the beautiful Kapadia Lalman Aftab Ali, happy birthday to you. Fiona Stewart, looking forward to see you pretty soon. Miss Asinarine, good evening to you from Orlando, Florida. Thank you very much. It's the night for ollies. Deborah Ali, Miss Atala 1D.
जब तक रात देता है हर कोई साथ,
voice of Mr. Devendra Pur, and a legendary singer in our community.
जब कोई बात बिगड़ जाए, जब कोई मुश्किल पड़ जाए, तुम देना साथ मेरा, ओ हमनवा.
Good evening, guys. We're talking with Judge George Grasso. Welcome back to Shanaz Musical Sensation. And I know you guys might have questions. Feel free to add it to the chat. So my question tonight for you is, tell me how you save your college. I know I heard rumors of that, but I want to hear it directly from you. How you save your college?
Well, played a role, I would like to say a significant role in a modest way. But I started York College in September of 1975, which is a matter of history, important history for the audience, was a time of the worst fiscal crisis in the history of New York City since the Great Depression. In fact, it was so bad in 1976, I remember that our finals were actually suspended because the city ran out of money. There was a presidential election that year. There's a famous Daily News headline of Republican President Gerald Ford saying to New York City, drop dead, when New York City was trying to get some additional funds to keep basic services going. In that context, York College was a fledgling senior college that had just began its existence in 1967. And it was moved in the early 1970s, I think around 1971. So, unsurprisingly, I would say, in that tough fiscal atmosphere, York College, at the time I began in September of 75, there was no campus. The main building was an old Montgomery Ward store across the street from Kings Park. Our campus were the streets of Jamaica Avenue, Sutphin Boulevard, Parsons, Hillside. But it was an exciting and an uplifting environment. And we were all very, very concerned when the word came out that a lot of the powers that be in Queens politics, some politicians in Queens that were very closely aligned with Queens College as a senior college. Hevesy was one of them. You know, they were kind of leaning into, what do you need a senior college at York College for? We could just walk away from York, maybe create a 2-year college at Fort Totten, and then that's going to, but in reality, it's going to create a situation in Southeast Queens where these plans to uplift an entire community were abandoned. So Dr. Shirley Ostome, who was in political science and was my pre-law advisor, also relatively new to the school, she wanted to set up a team of students who would protest, who would rally, who would go on lobbying missions locally into Albany to help fight for the school. And she says I was the first one to sign up.
Wow. Congratulations.
And I did sign, and I was super enthusiastic. And we had rallies, and we went to Albany. We met with the Speaker of the Assembly. We met with Hevesy, who didn't seem too interested. But we met with others who did appear, very interested, but we had to garner support. So what we did back in 1978 is we ended up working on a big demonstration assisted by the NAACP. And we started at York College in front of King's, the old King's department store built in front of King's, cross street from King's Park, the old Montgomery Ward store. And we marched all the way to Queensborough Hall, to the steps of Queensborough Hall. And that was a seminal rally. And we get to the steps of Queensborough Hall, and we're all there chanting, "We want Manus. We want Manus." Now, at the time, Donald Manus had not taken a clear, he was the borough president of Queens. But borough president at that time was a much more powerful position than like when Melinda Katz had borough president. It was no longer part of Board of Estimate. It was stripped of a lot of responsibility, more of a ceremonial position in many respects than it was then. At that time, as Board of Estimate, there was each borough was part of, the borough president was part of the Board of Estimate. And the borough president had a lot of power. And Manus had not yet taken a clear position on York. And if he was known to be not only one of five, but one of the most powerful of the five. And a lot of influence with then Mayor Ed Koch. So we were like, we want Manus, we want Manus. And I'm right in the middle chanting. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, we turned. Manus was a short guy, about 5'6", a little on the robust side, a little rough, gruff type of old school New York politician. And he all of a sudden appears in the middle of the crowd and he's pointing his finger. He might have even had a cigar. And he said, I'm going to build York College. We're going to build York. York is going to be built. And we looked at each other and we couldn't believe it. And we said, like, did we win? And then everybody was like, kind of, yeah, it looks like. And Manus, Donald Manus, was truly, things ended bad for him. He was part of a big corruption scandal. There's a book, City for Sale. But in that moment, at that time, Donald Manus responded to us, and he was good to it. Now we have this beautiful campus.
Right.
So this past Monday, after I submitted my excess of 9,500 petitions, I wanted to do a press conference and a rally in front of Queensborough Hall to make that proud announcement. And really, I invited students from Pandora's Box, which is the official newspaper of York College, which I, at the time, was one of the editors in Pandora's Box. I invited them to be there to cover that rally. And when I began speaking to the crowd and the press, I told the story about York College and Donald Manus and how significant it was for me at this stage of my life, launching this campaign to be Queens District Attorney and try and save Queens, that I could point back to a time when I was part of an effort to save
you make a
York.
difference. What is the population? What's right now in York College?
I know it's in the thousands. They have it's one of the premier senior colleges for CUNY. It's a wonderful campus. I think there are some budgetary issues, like there normally is, that they're trying to get through. But it's a wonderful school, and they have a lot of dedicated professors. And Dr. Ostholm, by the way, to this day, is advising me on my campaign and has been up to several of my fundraisers and has recommended interns. She introduced me to Gopal, and it's just one of the most amazing people.
A wonderful friend, of course, and he makes a difference in our community. So, guys, you will hear of that press conference on my TV program, Shanaz Musical Sensation, that airs on Spectrum TV every Saturday afternoon, 4:30 p.m. In the meantime, we'll take a music video break, and we'll be right back.
मेरा दिल ये पुकारे आजा, मेरा गम के सहारे आजा, भीगा भीगा है समा, ऐसी में है तू कहाँ, मेरा दिल ये पुकारे आजा,
दर्द पर आए कहीं दूर जब दिन ढल जाए सांझ की दुल्हन बदन छुराए चुपके से आए
Hey Errol, good evening to you. Mr. Rory Jagdare, good evening, good evening. I hope to see you pretty soon. Fabulous Wesley. Chandri Kadari. Auntie Nalini saying hello to the judge. If you have any questions, feel free to add it in the chat. What would you like to see improve in our community? Well, it's a beautiful Wednesday night in the studio. We are recording for our TV program that airs on Spectrum TV channel 96. It's an impromptu. All the oldies you enjoy on Shanaz Musical Sensation, but today we are speaking with Judge George Grasso, and I have some questions for him because I know many of you may remember 9/11. It seems like it was only yesterday, but I want to know, where was the judge and what was his part? Because I believe you were a detective at that time?
No, I was a deputy commissioner.
Deputy commissioner, wow.
General counsel of the NYPD.
Awesome. Tell me, from the starting of that day, what was your day like?
Well, it started as a very ordinary day. It was primary day, actually. We're talking about elections.
Elections.
At that time, primary September 11th was, and it was an important primary for mayor. So I got up early so I could go walk with my wife to a polling place.
Okay.
And we went and we were going in to vote. And just as a weird aside, when I think back to that day, there was a guy who was running for city council, and he was electioneering, meaning he was trying to hand out his
flyers
right in front, not like you're supposed to more than 100
feet away, right?
And he was actually the candidate, and I was the commissioner who oversaw the integrity of elections and the police department's role in that. So he tried to give us a flyer, and I started telling him, you're electioneering, you can't do it. Then my wife took the flyer, and I'm like, wait a minute, you can't do that, this guy. And then I chased the guy away. I just mentioned that because my wife and I got annoyed, with each other. She thought I was acting rude, and I was annoyed. She said, you can't take that. So anyway, we ended up in this argument.
You're disciplining him.
And she goes one way, I go the other way. I'm on my way to work, and I was going through the tunnel, the Midtown Tunnel, to get to work. And the first deputy commissioner, a man named Joe Dunn, who I greatly admire at the time, he was the first deputy police commissioner. He was calling me. I tried to call him back. At that time, the car phones, you'd lose them in the tunnel, so we lost each other. And then I ended up getting his secretary just as I was heading onto the FDR Drive from the Midtown Tunnel, and all of a sudden, she screams and says, a plane just hit the Twin World Trade Center, and hangs up. So I'm like, what's talking about? And I put on News 88, because it was about it in the 8s, trafficking, when I figured maybe the helicopter guy and he starts talking about this big crash, and it's, and it looks like we've never seen before. And I'm listening to that. I'm driving on the FDR, and I see this big hole, like an inferno with that. I'll never forget the brightness of the flame. So I rushed my way into police headquarters, and I looked for the commissioner. He was already on his way to the scene, and I was talking to his secretary. And as we were talking, we were in front of his conference room where there was a big screen TV, and the door was open, and then I saw the second plane hit. And when I saw the second plane hit, I knew in my mind it was a terrorist attack. I was a little suspicious from the beginning. How could such a big hole? But it's the second, I knew something was bad. So I grabbed two of my trusted officers, and we literally were running down to the site where our forward police command center is. It's 75 Barclay Street, just about a block away, 2 blocks away from where the towers were. And my original idea is that I was going to get right underneath it as the Deputy Commissioner General Counsel and find our commander who was managing the scene, knowing there'd be all kinds of federal, city, state agencies, and I could kind of run into interference for the uniformed people who had their job to do. So I was talking with Commissioner Dunn, and we saw the towers on fire, and we literally were seeing the people jumping out. I mean, the scene it's otherworldly as I recollect it. The people jumping, it was almost like, a confetti-ish thing, like from the parades, from the World Series parades. But it was what was happening. It was hard to wrap your head around this happening. But the one thing we didn't think was going to happen is we did not think the towers were going to come down. So I told Commissioner Dunn what I wanted to do was go right to the base of the tower and find our chief. It would have been Alan Hale. He was the commander of Patrol Bureau, Manhattan South. And Commissioner Dunn said, George, we just put up our command and control center in One Police Plaza on the 8th floor where we do we have situation room. He says, this is going to be going on for, the rest of the day. And I'd like you to go there and help get that started. I'll come back in about an hour. We'll figure it out. So I said, okay. And I just started walking a half a block away instead of walking in. And I remember I grabbed a hot cup of coffee from a vendor, and I heard someone say behind me, I heard the Pentagon was being hit. And my immediate instinct was Pentagon hit. I was going to turn around and almost chastise the person, like, we can't get hysterical. That was beyond my thought that the Pentagon would be hit.
You thought they panicked and they just said that out loud?
That's what I was thinking. And my friend, one of the officers who was with me, is Sergeant Gleason. He asked if he could borrow my phone so he could call his wife. And I said, sure. I gave him my phone. I'm making a turn from that particular block, which was just a block from where we left. Sergeant Gleason tells his wife, Lois, don't worry, everything's okay. I'm with Commissioner Grasso. Famous last words. He gives me the phone, and we hear the big explosion. That was of the South Tower coming down. We thought another plane hit. The third plane hit. So then I looked, and I had the whole cloud came right at us. We couldn't get away from it. It hit us. It overwhelmed us. I remember, and if you talk to anybody who's ever been hit by that cloud, they'll pretty much tell you the same thing. It's immediate lights out, dark black because of the jet fuel component. And I remember and I had that stupid argument with my wife, That's why I just mentioned that. We can't leave people we love with stupid arguments because you never know what's going to happen in this world.
Right.
And my thought at that moment was that my family's going to get a notification today. Like, I'm not making this. And then through that moment, then I got into my head, I'm not going to let these terrorists kill me on Church Street, which is basically where I was. And I called, one of my guys was John Totaro, and we got our arms on each other, and we got our way through the muck. Where I was, several people were actually killed. That cloud was full of the guts of the building. Debris, parts of the plane. But we made our way back to police headquarters. I was completely covered with muck from head to toe. When I got into headquarters to the 8th floor, I wrote like a 20-page, single-spaced account just of my day about a month or two later because I just felt it was so significant. It should be remembered. It should be recalled in some way. So I write about it, and I recollect, I go into that 8th floor. That is the command center for New York City at that point.
Was there counseling for you guys who were first responder there?
I'm just talking still about the day.
Right.
So I get into that command center, And all of the officers were doing the best, but the communications were down, the radios were down, the phones were down. And I grabbed, since I was the deputy commissioner and we have civilian control, I was in charge at that point. And I grabbed one of the chiefs and I brought him to a back room, not to scare anybody. I said, look, I don't know if anybody behind me survived. We have to find out where the mayor is, where the police commissioner is, where the chief of department is, where the first... We didn't know for about an hour. I was pretty much in charge of that operation as we were trying to figure out our logistics and establish a parameter. Finally, they came back, Commissioner Dunn came back, Chief Esposito, who was our chief, and then I was assigned that day to be the chief liaison officer between the NYPD, the mayor, and the FBI, and the U.S. Attorney. And I ended up that night into the early morning hours, and then for months later, that was my job. And we worked out of a garage because the FBI was knocked out of their headquarters at 26 Federal Plaza that night. So we had to create space the next day on 26th Street in the West Side Highway in a parking garage. And that's where we worked from. And that's where we protected New York City from. So that's the short version of what I did and where I was that day. And
that was very traumatic, right?
You know, I put it to you this way. I'm going to be, I've been blessed with an ability to dichotomize. It's like it was the worst, the most traumatic situation for me that day. When I was still in the command center next to Commissioner Dunn, a man came in, and this man was a man in his early 60s. He had been a retired captain in the fire department, and he had one son who was a police officer, and another son who was a firefighter. The police officer's son had been shot in the line of duty in the 75th Precinct in Brooklyn, and Joe Dunn had been the commanding officer. Man's name was Vigiano. And so he knew Mr. Vigiano. And Mr. Vigiano came in. Me and Joe were sitting at the head of the command table. And he's, Joe, Commissioner, where are my boys? Where are my... And we didn't know.
You don't know how to answer him.
We didn't know. And I remember I looked at Commissioner Dunn, and I saw the tears in his eyes. And he just said, found an officer and said, just stay with it. He said, John, we're going to do everything we can to find your boys. Both of them never made it. That moment was the moment that kind of, if anything, ripped my heart out that day, because I have two sons.
And you know that person.
And to see, that and knowing and thinking at the time that maybe the sons didn't make it. And then the next time I saw Mr. Vigiano is when he was speaking at his police officer's son's funeral. And we were in a situation in the NYPD that day where we had hundreds of police officers missing, and we didn't know how to get to them. And that was driving us all nuts, because the whole thing was a mountain. It turned into a hole, but it was a mountain of debris. Now, in the NYPD, we lost 23, which was horrific enough. The fire department lost 346.
Wow.
And I was in the middle of all that.
Sad day for New York City.
Sad day for humanity.
Sad day for humanity.
A man can do the man, and still does. Look at what's happening in the Ukraine today. Still does. I don't know. We can just do the best we can.
We're in studio speaking with Judge George Grasso today, and yes, he has a campaign, a meet and greet, actually also a fundraiser that's going to be held this Monday at Kiss Entertainment Center. Let's go ahead with Mr. Devendra Puran as we take a minute here.
अपना भी हाल तेरे जैसा है प्यार करे हम भी मौसम ऐसा है अपना भी हाल तेरे जैसा है प्यार करे हम भी मौसम ऐसा है धामाधा पागल से मारे माँ फिरते हैं अरे लेके तेरा ढंग तेरा साजना सारे गा मा पा 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 धा मारे अरे गा रहे हैं संग तेरे साजना
सारे गा मा पा
पा पा पा पा पा पा पा पा धा मारे
गार मेरे संग मेरे साजना
जिंदगी
Love, love, and more love when you're locked into Shanaz Musical Sensation. Hey, Mr. Ivor, Safi, good evening to you. Thank you for all of you who's locked in. Hey, Polly, good evening to you from Venezuela. Love, love, and more love coming to Mr. Fabulous, Wesley Antinalini, Patricia Samaru, Mr. Rory, Fabulous, thank you, and the beautiful Shami Anthony. Where is Mr. Devendra Puran on a night like tonight? And I'll read a message that I got earlier from Mr. Devendra Poor, and what a wonderful singer he is. Thank you, Shanaz, for doing all you do. You are an amazing, you're best at all you do. Thank you, Mr. Devendra. A special good night is going out to my wonderful friend, Mr. Ken. I hope you're feeling much better. The beautiful Sonia. Good night to Mr. Ashok Ram Saran. And to all you wonderful folks locked in on the website, ShanazMusicalSensation.com.
उन आँखों का हंसना भी क्या जिन आँखों में पानी ना हो
उन आँखों का हंसना भी क्या जिन आँखों में पानी ना हो
वो जवानी जवानी नहीं जिसकी कोई कहानी ना हो आंसू है खुशी की लहरी
Well, I'm looking at the time on the wall, and the time seems to be moving. But guess what? I opened the program asking the judge if he's having... First of all, welcome back, welcome back. I hope you're enjoying all the oldies. We're in conversation with Judge George Grasso today, and I opened the program with a conversation asking him, you're always smiling. Every time I see you have a great smile on your face, which means the question is, are you having fun?
110%. It's look, becoming a candidate and putting yourself out there and having to raise money and take the slings and arrows and build a whole campaign from scratch. It can be nerve-wracking, it can be frustrating, but there's a saying from one of my favorite presidents, Theodore Roosevelt, about being the man in the arena and having the courage of your convictions and being unrestrained now to call the truth as I see the truth and to know that I'm putting everybody else wants to see how much fun I'm having. Go to grassoforqueens.com, GRASSOFOR.com, and you can check us out. You can see our pictures. You can see our platform. You'll see what we're about. You can find out about our events, and you can even donate some funds to our campaign. This is what we really need. It's the gas in the tank to help us keep rolling with our message.
That is grassoforqueensny.com. So check out that website. Remember, the fundraiser will be this Monday at KISS Entertainment Center.
grassoforqueens.com,
not NY. Okay, grassoforqueens.com. Got it. I'll list that also on my Facebook. So guys, go there, Follow him, read what he's up to, see the pictures. He's amazing. And on Shanaz Musical Sensation, our Saturday program, you'll be seeing that exclusive interview he did on the Queens, is it the courthouse?
Yeah,
No?
the press conference.
The press
and the rally.
conference.
Yes.
That's right. You'll be able to see that. You could do come to Kiss Entertainment Center this Monday. That is April 17, 7 to 9 p.m., I believe.
Yes,
7 to 9. 7 to 10. Okay, so come on down. The flyer
Judge
is...
Grasso.
And meet the judge, get a picture with the judge and talk to him one-on-one. I've seen him at various events, and every time I see him, he's always shaking my hand. He's always smiling, and that's what I like. I get paired with positivity, and he's always smiling. So that's my mission right there. If you smile, I go and shake your hand. If you're approachable, you have to have an approachable face. I'm not going to say hi to you. And he's a people person. I must say that, He was in a room. I want to say big up to the Jamaican Rotary Club. Mr. George Iboni, thank you very much. He's a wonderful friend of our community, doing a fantastic job. And he was in a room full of supporters and everyone. He was, for the first time, it feels like you cared. Someone cared for our community. I want to put that out there. So guys, come on down this Monday at Kiss Entertainment Center. Let me get the flyer up there again. I will share it on my Facebook, because I'm looking forward to you guys come and shake his hand, get a picture with him, and hashtag Judge George Grasso for the DA office, the District Attorney 2023. Let's go. Thank you, Judge, for stopping by. I look forward to seeing you again. Until next time, let's go with another oldie, and we'll be right back.
क्या करूँ हाय कुछ कुछ होता है क्या करूँ हाय कुछ कुछ होता है
खोता है क्या करो हाय कुछ कुछ होता है
क्या करूँ हाय कुछ कुछ होता है
community, I must say, today. Well, it was an honor. You were listening to Judge Grasso. He has some amazing stories. I do enjoy that. And our guest today is Mr. Ethan Feather. Am I saying it right? Felder. I'm saying Feather. Felder, Mr. Felder, who's in our office today, our studio, because he is running for City Council District 29. And I know, well, reading all the maps recently, I was running myself, they divide the district pretty, like they chopped it up.
Chop things up in this redistricting year.
Uh-huh.
So it's a new district. Comprises Richmond Hill, Forest Hills, Kew Gardens, and Regal Park. And it's an odd thing that there's now an election 2 years after the last city council and mayoral elections because of this redistricting. So it's important that people become aware that there is an election, a primary election, an important one, coming up on June 27th, where the entire city council is up for election.
All right, so what is your priority for the district? I mean, city council. Tell us some of your job description. What would you be doing as...
In addition to passing legislation that impacts our entire city, we're doing the most important thing, which is assembling and putting together a budget over $80 billion on behalf of the people of the city of New York. And I think we need to have our budget priorities in order. What leads me to run in a district that's full of families, parents, students is education. And we need to fully fund our schools. When we look at some of the data in the last budget, it really took a slashing to our enrichment programs here in Richmond Hill. I see numbers like 50-70% programs cut. And what that means for our students and our children, especially after what happened with COVID and all of the learning loss that happened over the course of the pandemic, we need to make sure that our children, our schools are fully funded in order for our children to succeed. And that's what I'm centering in my campaign. I think we need to prioritize that.
Great. COVID hit the kids more harder than it hit the adults. They were missed out on socializing because they look forward to going to school, not just for learning, but to meet their friends and networking and those kind of things.
And I saw that up close just among my neighbors who were raising children in my apartment building in Forest Hills. And, there really was that loss of socialization that really took a toll.
What is the school doing for that?
That's a good question. I think the students are still recovering from that loss and the socialization that should have taken place. And right now, schools are under-resourced in a whole lot of ways. One way in our education district, which is District 28, is special seats for special needs students. In addition to the overcrowding that exists in schools, particularly in the northern part of the district, where some schools are at 100% capacity, 120% capacity. We need to reduce class sizes, and there's a law passed by New York State in that regard. We need to make sure that it's not only implemented, but we have enhanced increased school capacity. And that's part of my platform as well.
Very good. So, if my question would be, why run?
Well, like the judge was saying, you have to have, I think, a real deep spirit of service to take this on, because for folks out there who are listening, running for office is not easy. Just right now, we're talking about getting the signatures to qualify for the ballot. For city council, it's 450. I'm very fortunate.
450 only.
Which doesn't sound like a lot until you think about going out and finding 450 people registered in one party and getting them to stop on the street and sign a piece of paper in the cold of early March. And it becomes much more taxing than it sounds.
Well, we have the whole of April. We have a better weather now coming up.
But the weather today, you just can't get any better. But I will say that I think that one of the things that leads me to run is seeing the entrenchment that exists in our politics, coupled with disengagement that you see when campaigning on the streets, where there's not the kind of interaction, engagement, and even people who have become really disenchanted and cynical with the political system and political process. And what I'm trying to do is renew democracy at a local level, just on account of running. Too many elections in this council district are held without proper contest or even debate, and candidacies are decided on the basis of legacy and political connection, rather than an evaluation as to what our representatives are achieving for us. So that's what led me to run for city council, because frankly it's time for a change. I come at this from a background as a union lawyer, a labor lawyer, and community advocate who's fought to make sure that everyone across our communities lives free of any kind of discrimination. And I've been at the forefront of fighting for the most vulnerable workers during the pandemic and before that.
Wow. Good evening to Mr. Robert Ram, Ivor Safi, Sangeeta Kemlal. How are you doing? Good evening to each and every one of you. We are speaking with Mr. Ethan Felder, who's running for City Council in District 29. Now, I believe you have to live in the district?
You do, and so I grew up in the district in Forest Hills, just a few blocks from where I live right now. My parents still live in the district in Forest Hills. I went to local schools. I'm a proud product of Townsend Harris High School.
Great school.
It's a great school, and I wouldn't be who I am without that immersive education, enriching education that I received, but also the diversity that school provided in terms of the people, the students, and the families that came from all different backgrounds, including the Indo-Caribbean community.
Yes, a lot.
Which is such a rich, beautiful, and loving culture.
Right?
That's
Yes.
That's right.
And on that note, I'd like to say good evening to the beautiful Yvonne. Thank you, Yvonne, for always being a good friend, supporter, and directing good people my way. Let's go with the voice of Mr. Devendra Puran, and we'll be right back on Shanaz Musical Sensation. It's a Wednesday night, and we're live. We're actually recording for a TV program that airs on Spectrum TV, Channel 96, The Bigger Picture, and it's also on my website, www.shanazmusicalsensation.com. Patricia Samaro, good evening to you. Usha Azimula, Navin. Where is the famous John from Queens? So many of my regulars are not locked in. Well, it's an unusual day. And Usha has a question for the judge. When will he be coming to Wisconsin? Well, pretty soon. We need people in our community that makes a difference, that goes out there. And they said you have to see folks doing community work, right?
Exactly to that point. I really think you should have a track record of service before you become a candidate. For me, I cut my teeth trying to bring the community together in moments of deep distress with the rise in discrimination and hate that we've seen in the last few years against various communities, and bringing the community together and standing up for voting rights when a community in Lefrak City was being disenfranchised and having their votes suppressed. And we won before 3 different judges and taking on the powers that be at the Board of Elections. I really do think we need people to step up and want to serve, and to do so for the right reasons. It's not an easy undertaking, but it's an essential one. And I do encourage people to do it if they're willing to put in the hard work. Yeah, yep. Because it is a lot of hard work.
What do you think about the division in our district?
You see, any candidate, in my view, as I experienced it, and I wrote a piece about this, is seeing and feeling the polarized political discourse, where people are openly discouraging campaigners on the street from doing the essential work of democracy, talking to people about the issues. There's such disenchantment out there, and there's such polarization. We need to do our part as elected representatives, first and foremost, the media, schools, the Board of Elections, to try and rebuild trust between voters, the community, and our political system. And I will say, there were instances where you have the incumbent candidate trying to suppress our ability to campaign, which is just antithetical to the democratic process. And democratic way. And to me, it illustrates why there's a need for change, and there's a willing to get into the arena, as the judge said, and willing to stand on principle rather than just be swayed by the political winds of the moment. That doesn't come too often. It's so important that we have hard-headed, pragmatic, thoughtful leaders in a moment that is so polarized, where we see our democracy at a national level being tested, being challenged in recent years. So we can't take something so precious for granted, and it's an ongoing endeavor, and it takes all of us to be bought in and to engage with it.
Right. Speaking of polarized, I know a lot of folks taking pictures showing that they're out there, but making a difference is actually accomplishing a task. You know, what are we doing behind the scenes except taking pictures with a crowd saying I'm a community person?
Right, exactly. So for me, I take it upon myself to try and elevate the discourse as a candidate in terms of the issues that are going on. Whether it's something that matters in terms of plans to change or improve a street in Forest Hills, Austin Street, and writing about community meetings on what is being said in these meetings, trying to bring people in to these discussions rather than having these decisions being made behind closed doors. That's very important, because all too often these things, people feel disenchanted and feel distrust when they're removed and excluded from the decisions that affect them the most.
I attended a few community board meetings in our district. It's always you don't know what's happening until you attend one of those meetings and you hear of the crime. What do you think about the crime rate?
Right. Look, public safety, is first and foremost. That's the foremost duty of government, not only to make sure that people feel safe, but that they are safe across our neighborhoods. Crime, and it's definitely risen in some areas of the district, and I will work alongside the NYPD and the 102nd and the 112th precincts in making sure that they have the resources to respond to crime. But first and foremost, prevention. Making sure that we have the programs in place to make sure at-risk youth are not falling into the ways that they shouldn't. Trying to root out and do something about the conditions that lead to crime, I think first and foremost has to be our priority.
Okay, what do you think about all these smoke shops popping up in every block of the areas?
I heard about it just in a conversation with a community leader a few hours ago, and not just hearing about it, but seeing it, whether it's all across the district. And I understand the quality of life concerns that people have about that.
Because at one of the community board meeting, it was told there that kids are appearing in school with smokes, and these things are so accessible that it's in our community, it's in the block you're living in.
Well, I could say, as someone who wants to be a future parent, I don't know if I want my child going into a smoke shop, and I could understand.
It's like temptation right at your door,
Look, there needs to be proper enforcement and ensuring that we just don't have an over-proliferation of smoke shops across our neighborhoods.
It's too easily,
Becoming more
pop up.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Right. Good evening, everyone. You're locked into Shanaz Musical Sensation. Thank you for being a part of our program. My beautiful mom, Bibi Muhammad, is just joining us. I'm sure she's just finished with all her namaz, and she decided to join. Hey, Ginger, good evening to you. Mr. Rampatop Singh, how are you doing? Thank you. And I'm sure you'll enjoy this melody. Guess the singer. We're speaking with Mr. Ethan Felder, who is running for Council, District 29.
आँख खुली तो तन्हा
It's a beautiful night for some oldies as we're discussing community service. What would you like to see improve in the community you live in? And yes, we're speaking of District 29, which includes Richmond Hill, Forest Hills, Regal Park, Kew Gardens, and the safety of our community is that, you know, if you're not out there, you're not worried about it. But we have kids, we work late, we're always on the road. We want a safer community. We want a smoke-free community as well. But, you know, we're working on that. So we're speaking with Ethan Felder, and tell us where we could find you. What are you hoping to accomplish?
What I'm looking to accomplish is to be a responsive, accessible candidate and hopefully elected public official. So if folks want to reach out, my website is ethanfornyc.com. That's ethanfornyc.com. And you could, have coffee with me. And we can have a conversation, because that's what it should be about. You should know your council member. This is the position that touches people the most, the closest. It's your touch point to all of city government. So it's someone who you should know who they are. You should see them on the streets and understand what they're doing on your behalf.
And you could voice your concerns,
That's
right?
exactly right. To me, that's the most important thing, is to have an approachable, accessible city council member, and that's how I'm trying to be as a candidate, and will hopefully eventually be as a public official.
Good evening. Thank you very much. And from your conversation with our judge earlier, I was listening. It seems like you know a lot about politics, and you are here to make a difference. So guys, I urge you to get out there, get on his website, and remember, most of all, get out there and vote. Election is set for June
27th.
June 27. You could get in the local schools. I believe I've been always voting at the local schools.
Right.
So guys, go out there, make a difference. And if you would like to know more, read up on his website, www.ethanfelder.
ethanfornyc.com.
ethanfornyc.com is pretty short, unlike mine's, they said it's too long, but it's ShanazMissionSociety.com, ShanazMusicalSensation.com, ethanfornyc.com.
Thank you, Shanaz, for having me. It's very
You're watching Shanaz Musical Sensation on the famous John from Queens YouTube channel. Continue supporting our #1 YouTuber, John from Queens. I'm yours truly, Shanaz Hussein.